Hi all, Wolf Lord Rho here. Before I begin today, a big thank you to Derm for the virtual gift voucher. It is very much appreciated. Thank you very much, my friend, for helping support the channel. Today, we are starting to take a look at the bond between the Salamanders chapter and the Blood Angels, with Tu'Shan, chapter of the Salamanders, meeting the Lord of Imperium Nihilus, Lord of the Host, heir to Sanguinius, chapter master of the Blood Angels. Feel like I'm doing a bit of a boxing introduction here. The one, the only, Dante. Spoiler warning to begin with. Today we are covering events from the short story Burden of Angels. And I have to say, this was a really good little read. Two great founding chapters with two great characters. I really recommend you read this story for yourself first. Not only will you get the most enjoyment out of it this way, but we help to support the Great Black Library and Games Workshop, because without them, well, we don't have this fantastic lore to enjoy and talk about. I will put a link to the Black Library website in the video description for those that are interested. And seriously, for £2.50, you can't go wrong. I recently just browsed the Black Library website and just grabbed a bunch of short stories for less than 20 quid. But with that said, let's jump straight in. Mortals call us angels. Our wings are of fire and our wrath is terrible to behold. But there is nothing supernatural about us. We are flesh, blood and bone, neither vaunted nor immortal. Yet we are both awed and feared, like beings of true light. I once believed there was one amongst us, he who was descended from the deific, that could claim this mantle, noble beyond reproach, ageless and wise. If asked, I would have said he was a true angel. It was not until the day when I saw his mask slip, and then the mask beneath it also fall away, that I learned truly how angelic Dante was. My revelation began on Hecatomb. Rust-red sand skirled across a barren plain, obscuring the hulking silhouettes of gunships. One of those vessels belonged to us, though it was lost in our wake and the storm winds eddying down from the northern mountains. Our footprint was gone too, swept away as if we had never walked from the high plateau. A burst of flame soared up from a volcano amongst the high mountain peaks. It was but a child's laughter to a salamander, but Vulcanus appreciated the symmetry as he watched it erupt. "A taste of home," he murmured across the Vox. "You whelp." "Dragnir spit as more ferocity," replied Zadir, argumentative as always. Beneath my draconic faceplate, I smiled at their banter. It was right and good for fire drakes to have some volatile spirit. It had to be instilled. I trusted this task to Praetor, my sergeant of the fire drakes, but his mood had grown dark of late. He fought an inner war, in a crucible that would either forge him stronger or break him. Praetor would have mocked this drab world's fury too. Hecatomb was a much lesser version of Nocturne. By comparison, its skin-searing heat was a gentle caress. Its mountains, like diminutive crags to the Salamanders, who had seen soaring peaks that rose and obscured the sun. "Your breath does, Zadir," remarked Zacchus, siding with his brother. "Sked-eating," Zadir began. Icanius interrupted. "Ahead," he said, the slate screen of his auspex crackling with interference. 200 meters and closing. Despite the static, I could see the range counter clicking down to 0. "Are you certain, Vanguard?" Zadir asked, using his derogatory nickname for Icanius. It reflected his eagerness to always lead the line. His tenure as a fire drake in my retinue was shorter than the others. Soon enough, he would learn he had nothing to prove. I recall a desert basin some 800 meters back that looked nothing like our destination. The storm was fouling my instrumentation. "Sure it's not your nose for direction that is foul?" Icanius turned and glared at Zadir, but when others joined in with his laughter, any unmeant insult was forgotten. "Are we discussing your breath again, brother?" Icanius replied, though he looked serious. More laughter. I was glad to hear it. There had been precious little to laugh about since the invasion, but Nocturne had survived. Our chapter and its tribes lived. But I still carried many burdens. This is a great little scene of the Salamanders here. It really encapsulates their humanness. The Salamanders are famed for being much closer to humanity than their fellow Astartes, and little glimpses like this of them just having a bit of banter as they're walking, it helps give us little insight to that. I've never really read any of the 40k Salamander novels apart from the Horus Heresy series, while of course I fell in love with Vulcan and his sons in those, but this short story has really made me decide to go back and read through the Salamanders 40k timeline books. I'm really looking forward to going through them. Do not pity this world's anger, I said to my warriors. Bask in it, defy it, and should it still dissatisfy you, only then turn to Zadir for a true test of your courage. The laughter grew. It was a rare thing for us. Though fire drakes were known for their choleric temperament, in that way we had much in common with the wolves. But it was not Grimnar and his Fenrisian dogs of war I had come to see. As the winds abated, the sand thinned to reveal ruby-red gunships and a half-sunken citadel behind them. It was an old bastion of the Blood Angels, made of smooth, pale granite. Though the red sand had stained it and eroded some of the statuary clinging to its curved walls, a banner hung from an arch above us, fluttering mournfully in the breeze. A wide archway granted admittance to the bastion. It might once have been large enough to allow mighty war engines through, but it had sunk low and awkwardly, that only a warrior in power armour could pass through the archway now. 3 such warriors stood before it to greet us. I knew Israfel, the herald, nodded to us as we approached. I also saw Cassiel, never far from his master's side. Behind them stood a figure as noble and imperious as I remembered him. His warplate had been crafted to resemble unadorned muscle, albeit wrought from gilded adamantium and ceramite. Largest amongst its many gemstones was a ruby blood droplet emblazoned upon his chest, 2 angelic wings spreading out from it across his armoured pectorals. A gold mask hid his face from us, again made to look like the face of an unarmoured man, and he wore an exquisite looking axe at his hip. As a salamander, I could appreciate a finely forged blade, and this one had few equals. What a great little description this is. Between them stood a figure as noble and imperious as I remembered him. Dante. Who else but Dante? I have to say, virtually any time you get some form of description of Dante in the Black Library, it's always really well done. You can just feel the respect the rest of the Imperium has for him, and just the legend that he is. I've spoken before about how the novel Devastation of Baal is one of my favourites, and really made me love Dante and the Blood Angels. When we talk about top tier heroes of the Imperium in the current timeline, you are hard pressed to not have Dante at the very top. It had been years since we last met to honour the pledge. Here on Hecatomb, at the sunken citadel, the ritual between our chapters would finally take place again. As we reached the angels, I knelt, and so did my warriors. "Rise, Tu'Shan, all of you," said Dante, his voice melodic yet strong, "and know you are amongst friends." As I arose, Dante gripped my wrist in the manner of warriors, and we embraced as brothers. "Well met, Tu'Shan." He sounded pleased to see us. "Tell me all that has happened since we last spoke." "A tale not as warm as this welcome, I am afraid." "I see." I noted Dante's warriors bowed respectfully, but did not shake hands with my drakes. The angels were often reserved in this way, poised always. I considered Dante's efforts towards me exceptional. The Lord of the Host went on in the same vein, clapping my shoulder guard. "Then let us speak inside, out of this storm. I have warned Koresh all the way from Baal." Warned by entropy, the blood droplet above the immense arch of the sunken citadel, was a reminder of whose territory this was. As we passed under it, I was reminded of something else: the vaunted history of the angels and their taste for blood. The Koresh tasted hot. On Nocturne I was used to something stronger, but the bar-light wine was not without flavour and potency. Dante watched me keenly, sipping at his chalice as I drained my own silver goblet dry. Not one to savour wine, are you, Tu'Shan? I reserve my indulgence for the forge, Dante. He laughed at that, as if amused at some private joke. Here we are getting to see something not often shown. In 2 chapters, not meeting for a campaign or battle, but merely out of respect for each other. And this is clearly seen in the 2 chapter masters' greeting. Dante telling the Salamanders to rise and know they are amongst friends. Tu'Shan noting that Dante clasping his wrist is something pretty out of the ordinary for blood angels to do. It really highlights the respect and even fondness Dante has for Tu'Shan. We so often see Dante feeling the burden of his years, the weight of the Imperium upon his back. It's a nice change to have this kind of moment of him, laughing and in good spirits. Dante's chambers were dark and Spartan. Statues and banners, half hidden by the shadows, compromised what little decor there was within. Dante had removed his helm soon after entering the room and sat cloaked in darkness on a simple iron throne. I took the one opposite, facing the Lord of Hosts and the faded mosaic behind him. It depicted a pair of angels, one of the light and one of the dark, benevolent protector and wrathful avenger on both turns of the figurative coin. Duality of the self came through heavily in its symbolism. Artistic and beautiful, the mosaic suggested an internal struggle, one not fought with blades but willpower. I wondered what it meant and considered that I was reading too much into it. Sipping at his carash, which had a more coppery scent than the wine I was drinking, the Lord of the Blood Angels looked pensive as he read my reaction to the mosaic. I had already related the tale of war that had almost brought Nocturne to its knees, of the return of the dragon warriors, of the defection and subsequent corruption of 2 of my brothers. I needed the drink to quell my remembered anger, or my nerves. I could not be sure which. Here before me was Dante, one of the oldest and wisest chapter masters in the entire Adeptus Astartes. Our deeds, my own and my chapters, on Armageddon, had earned his respect. A bond had forged between us. At the end of the dragon strife, as some were calling it, I had need of his counsel more than ever. Mastery of a chapter is a heavy burden, Dante said, taking another sip of his drink. Emperor knows we have all felt it. He seemed wearisome, as if gripped by sudden listfulness. Dante had outlived many, seen much and fought in hundreds of battles. Did his martial pride hide some latent sense of apathy? His next words prevented me asking this question. Your world endures, your chapter also. I fail to see reason for doubt. It isn't doubt, I said. If I am unworthy, another will replace me. None have stepped forwards. I seek counsel to avoid the mistakes I have made before, and to ward against future complacency. You think you were complacent? I should have seen it. The canker worming within. I felt the urge to lower my gaze, but resisted, not wanting to seem weak. I am not weak. My blood runs with Promethean fire, and my will is the same iron it has ever been. But I know I have erred, and must make restitution for that failing. I hoped Dante would have some insight. Had you known, had you seen, it would have been little different. Dante was almost nonchalant, but I knew he was trying to ease the blow to my ego. I both hated and admired him for that. What if there is something insidious at the heart of my chapter, Dante? Can it be purged? With fire, his voice level, he remains studiedly neutral. This existence of ours has a way of corrupting even the most stalwart hearts, Tu'Shan, and not just to ruin. Lest we forget, we are still human, albeit transcended. You and your kin are perhaps the most human of us all. Even angels can misstep, brother. Our measure should not be how we came to do so, but rather in how we can rectify it. Here we have Dante imparting his wisdom and advice to another chapter master. Such a great insight to see. So many chapter masters across the Imperium would believe themselves with little equal. But here Tu'Shan is humbly asking Dante for his input. And how on point Dante is. Lest we forget, we are still human, albeit transcended. Just because they are space marines doesn't mean that they are incapable of making mistakes, as well Dante knows. There wouldn't have been such a thing as the Horus Heresy otherwise. Now I bowed my head, but out of respect, not shame. As ever, I am humbled by your wisdom. Do not be so. I only tell you what you already know. In you and your salamanders, I see the same nobility you perceive in me, Tu'Shan. I admire your humanity. It is both your greatest strength and greatest weakness. You are a contradiction, as am I. I see only unimpeachable honour, brother. Finishing off the last of his drink, he leaned forwards, and I saw the purity and divinity of his face without the veil of shadow to obscure it, a being of true light. Then look closer. A strain of dark red, but otherwise Dante's eyes were alive with undeniable power and deep wisdom. I remarked as much, at which he laughed sadly. A mask, I assure you, Tu'Shan. At that moment, I did not understand what Dante meant. Israfel entered the chamber and bowed, preventing any further inquiry. The time of the ritual was upon us. What a great place to end it here. Dante pointing out the famed Salamanders' humanity being both their greatest strength and weakness. And rightly so. They are true sons of Vulcan. And that he sees the same nobility in them as they do in him. What a great little passage this is to get not only a glimpse of the relationship between two chapters, first founding chapters at that, but also the chapter masters, Dante and Tu'Shan. Such a fantastic little short story. And Dante even trying to let Tu'Shan know of his own flaws in a subtle kind of way. To let him know, hey look, I am not perfect. Do not hold yourself to this impossible standard. You're doing a good job. It's tough being a chapter master. Great stuff, it really was. But what do you guys think? Did you enjoy this glimpse into the Salamanders and Blood Angels relationship? How about Dante and Tu'Shan? Do you think, like me, it would be good to see more of these types of stories? I'd love to see other famed chapter masters meeting each other, meeting Dante too. Logan Grimnar, Azrael, Marnius Calgar. Let's get some more lore between these iconic characters. As always, drop your comments down below. I always love to read your thoughts and opinions on these topics. A huge thank you to all of my subscribers. I truly appreciate all of your support. And if you're new, then please consider subscribing to help the channel grow too. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, well, then why not drop a like on it. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you guys again real soon.